you have to trade off or deprioritize anything?
Yeah, that for sure happened.
How did you think about it?
I mean, I took those 2 months and didn't do anything but write the book.
Oh my God.
What I learned probably wasn't the smartest thing to do.
Welcome to the Evolve Voices podcast, a platform to hear the fascinating stories behind the people that power global commerce. I'm Edilsa, a brand advisor, and your US host of Evolve Voices. Writing a book can feel impossible. You think you need the perfect idea, the perfect time, maybe even the perfect life to do it. Ex-Nike VP Kevin Ertell thought the same thing until he actually sat down and did it. He shares what it takes to write a book, disappearing for 2 months, deciding whether to go at it alone or work with a publisher, hiring an interior designer. Yes, an interior designer for your book. But Kevin isn't just an author. He's lived in the trenches, starting on the floor at Tower Records in high school, running stores by 21, eventually leading initiatives at Nike, Borders, Sur La Table. He knows how to get things done. He's also famously a huge sports fan, which is why I was genuinely surprised when I read his book and realized sports barely show up. And that's exactly where we start. I was so surprised in reading this book because if anyone knows Kevin, everyone knows that he is a huge sports fan. I mean, he's working right now for the Timberwolves. And as we go, you don't mention sports until maybe page 315 of this book, which surprised me, especially because you always make sports analogies. And when you finally do, you use Kenny Atkinson from the Cavaliers example, and it is to explain trust and execution. Did you consciously hold yourself back from using these?
So it's funny to me you notice that. What happened to there is editing. I had lots of sports metaphors in the first draft.
Right.
And, I sent it off to the editor, and the editor sends back, the way it comes back is he makes lots of edits within the document, but he also has these editing notes. So I got like a memo of here's like big picture kind of where we did the edits. And then he had all these edits in there where he'd sort of explain, here's the main point and here's why,
Right.
And just the very last bullet just said, too many sports metaphors.
Too many. Is there too many? I don't even know if that's the thing. Was it just because it wasn't like meant for this book?
I think he thought it was just it's too much relying on one type of metaphor. I thought, okay, I'll reserve the sports metaphors there because it's really tightly, like sports coach really fits kind of what I'm talking about there. And I changed all the metaphors anywhere else to be something else. And I do think it made the book better. It didn't make it feel so much like it was just one sort of direction. So I think it was good in the end, but his comment made me laugh when I got it the first time. That's all it said. There was no explanation or anything.
Be honest. Most people in corporate will never write a book. I'm sorry. I hate to tell you. Only about 15% of people who aspire to write a book ever even start writing. Some think about it, some talk about it, some start one. Open a Google Doc at 11 p.m., type a few paragraphs, then never touch it again. I mean, it's crossed my mind every time a publisher approaches. I tell myself maybe later. And honestly, that makes sense. The day-to-day is busy, meetings pile up, deadlines loom. Slack never stops buzzing. So when someone who's spent their life getting things done decides to actually sit down and write, I want to know why. Why this topic? Why a book? Why now? For Kevin, it started with a pattern he couldn't ignore. And a number most of us have heard, but rarely let sink in. It feels like this book could only come from your lived experience, right? You have had execution, working on the floor is your bread and butter. When did the idea first come to you? Was it in corporate that you first had a niggling thought? Was it after?
I mean, I've always been a writer. I've written a lot. In the workplace, I would always write a weekly email to my team. For a while, I had a blog out there. So I always like to write. And there's always been this idea of doing a book at some point. It was not long before I started writing this one, though, that I really centered on the idea of what I wanted to write about. I've always been very passionate about execution and getting things done and understanding that there's a process to it and it's more involved than what people usually put into it. And, then I looked out and saw that most strategies fail. I mean, there's so much data about that. 90% of strategies fail. And the number one reason they fail is poor execution. So I thought, well, that is a passion point for me and something I would like to write about. I also looked out there and saw there is a billion books about how to write a strategy, but there's not that many about execution, surprisingly. Almost all the ones that are out there around execution are written by academics and consultants. And as I was thinking about that, I thought, well, Yes, I want to do it that way. I want it to be practical, but I don't want it to be just my point of view. So I decided I wanted to interview a bunch of people who were operators and get their perspective into it. I set myself a goal as I wanted to get 1,000 years worth of experience from, all the people that I
Yeah.
interviewed. And I did. I interviewed over 60 people. I got a lot of a lot of experience. All people who've been there, done that, not people who had just studied it. So that was kind of the focus.
So many small and invisible decisions make execution.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think about the book itself. When you decided you actually want to write this book, who was your first call? Was it your wife? What was the first call you made?
Well, I talked to a bunch of authors, actually. I mean, I talked to Ron Thurston. Ron's been amazing helping me, through all the mechanics of it. Steve Dennis is another guy. Blake Dvorak, who's the husband of Jill Dvorak. She connected me with him, and he's a writer. I first talked to people about that just to understand what's it going to take. Then when I decided what I was going to do, then I started to talk to operators, and Mike Edwards was actually the first person I called, someone who I've had a lot of discussions about execution over the years. He has a distinction of being my first interview for the book, which I don't know if he even knows that, but he is.
I just wonder when we have those calls, like when I was telling people that I was launching my own consulting company, that I was launching my podcast, what do we go to them for, right? Was it validation that you were looking for? Like, is this a good idea? Was it to alleviate pressure from yourself? What were you looking for him in this call?
Probably a combination of validation and insights. We've always talked about execution, but I wanted to really kind of get him on the record and really talk through it and get into detail about it. Like all the conversations I had when I talked to all these people I interviewed were so awesome. I wish I would have, video recorded them and turned them into a podcast. Because when people started to really talk about why they did what they did and what worked and all that, it was really enlightening and awesome to hear, all these different perspectives. But all these perspectives, it started to really sort of come together as I was pulling together the book and putting together what I call the 6 C's system and how to relate it to others. There was just a lot of commonalities regardless of industry, and that was validating in itself too.
When you were making these calls and getting these insights, did it show you what the book wouldn't be? Yes, you knew that this would be the first true operators breakdown book, but did it show you like maybe my book doesn't need to touch this piece of execution?
I think what it really reinforced for me is that there is a book here that is practical and not theoretical.
Okay.
And the more that's what I wanted it to be to begin with, but the more I talked to people weren't giving me theories. We weren't talking about theories. We were talking about practical things that could be applied or were applied by other people that worked. And that's what I wanted more than anything to begin with. I wanted the book to be something that's useful, that people can grab and use. And as they're building or putting together a new strategy and executing, they've got something there that they can use. I literally have checklists in the book so that you can use it, not just read it once and put it on the shelf.
And you have application too, which I thought was really important with Office Ace, your mythical company, right? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, awesome. Glad you like that.
You talked to Ron, who wrote a book. You talked to others who wrote a book, and it made me think that step of making a book is a hard one. I will give you kudos. I won't name the person who said this to me, but 2 years ago, they said they were going to write a book and they still haven't. And so you committed to writing a book, and here you are, within, I think, a year of turning it around. We talked about January last time. Now it's January now. One of the first real execution decisions an author faces is publishing. How did you figure that out? Were you like, let me go through a publisher, or do I go independent? How did you decide that piece?
Yeah, I mean, it started by just learning how it works, because there's really 3 ways you can go. You can go traditional publisher, so everyone kind of knows that one, big publisher names. You can go self-publishing completely. And then there's something called hybrid in the middle, which hybrid is a publisher. It's just a different model. Traditional publishing, they pay you in advance to basically buy your content from you, and then they basically own your content and drive the process. And you make money after you've paid off your advance, essentially. They also take a much higher percentage of the book sales. So you get the benefit there of maybe a big name in publishing, and you get, you don't have as much skin in the game, I guess, initially in terms of financial. Hybrid publishing, you pay for the services you get. They're a full publisher. They provide all the elements of full publishing, but you pay for it up front as opposed to getting in advance. The flip side of that is you get more control over your content, and you get a higher percentage of the book sales. They take a much smaller portion of that. And then, the model of self-publishing is you pay for everything and you get all the rest. For me, that hybrid model was the one that was most attractive to me. I could move quickly with it. I really wanted to control my content. So then it was a matter of which publisher within that, and there's a ton of hybrid ones. And what I learned quickly is there are some scams out there. There's a lot of scam hybrid publishers, and there's a relatively small amount of legitimate publishers. The legitimate ones are a little harder to get into. You have to submit. You can't just get into it, so that's one way to know. I found Idea Press, who run by Rohit Bhargava, who's famous for his non-obvious trends books. That sort of fit the way he thinks about things fits the way I think about things. A lot of what I write about in the book is not conventional wisdom, and that's why I think it works. So that resonated with me. They use really great people. The guy that did my book cover is the guy who's done Adam Grant's books,
Awesome.
Atomic Habits. So they're using the same people that traditional publishers use. So I felt like I could get really high quality out of that, get all the help I needed to get it going, professional editing, people to tell me I use too many sports metaphors, things like interior design, which was something that I'd never even thought about ever. But the woman who did the interior design made the book so much better. So that was good to have that kind of people help me through it.
Sounds like control then may have been your biggest trade-off. You were like thinking, how can I control more? Was it also credibility? I know like sometimes just being able to carry somebody like who has done Adam Grant's books, that does bring a certain amount of cliche. Wow, I cannot think of the word, but a certain amount of credibility to it, to use it again. Was that also on the table for you?
It wasn't, in a way. I mean, because I wanted the quality. I wanted to make sure I had high quality. And I think quality gives you credibility. I wanted to make sure like this book, it's really, it's quality. The materials are really good. It looks very good, when you look at it. That I think gives credibility to it, which I thought was important. I'm super happy with how it came out. It looks great, so
it's amazing. Yeah. You talked about control and quality, and part of it, who's writing it, right? Did you ever consider a ghostwriter, or was like, I've written blogs, I love writing, this is going to be on me?
Yeah, I'd never considered it because I do love writing. I love writing because I like the act of writing, but I love what I learned from writing, and how it formulates and it gets my thoughts a lot better. There's just so much value in doing it. I mean, it's a ton of work, but I never once considered a ghostwriter. No, I didn't. It was important for me to do it myself. That was the big driver.
I mean, I've written operating plans before, but I think this is a whole different ballgame. 394 pages. I mean, how do you keep yourself in check in that process? Was it messy? Did you have a certain amount of discipline within it?
It's probably more messy than discipline, at least at first, because I was just trying to get the ideas together. I had an outline, but I blew apart the outline multiple times as I started to write. Once I started writing, I realized the outline wasn't flowing right, so I had to change it around. I mean, I don't know. You've done a lot of strategy decks and that kind of thing. It's, to me, I like, if I go give a speech or something, it's the same thing. I start with one idea. Right? As I start going through it, I might shift it around until it flows right. So it got more disciplined as I got closer to the end, but it was definitely a lot messier up front.
Did you have milestone checkpoints every morning? How did you think about it?
I've heard people do that, but I knew that wasn't going to work for me. I needed to pick my spots. I did block out a lot of time on my calendar though, so I wasn't doing this in the middle of the night or something like that. Pretty much didn't book any meetings and just worked on the book for 2 months. So that helped too, because it would have taken forever if I was just doing it a couple hours a day. I needed to really block out time and do it.
I'm going to throw back your execution frameworks on you and tools. You had this part in the book, you said 3 checkpoints for planning. One was quarterly OKR check-ins, monthly red flag sessions, and coordination across teams. Did you have a monthly red flag session of sort for yourself, in the sense of, okay, I have this timeline. Am I totally off base here now?
Not like that, but I did have goals and deadlines for myself, and so I did know where I wanted to be and where I wanted to sort of get it published and when I wanted it to come out. All that stuff shifted a little bit, but I definitely was pushing myself toward the schedule for sure.
That's actually even more interesting for me. Why didn't it make sense for you in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the things you mentioned, maybe I could have used OKRs, but red flag meetings and cross-functional meetings didn't matter as much because it was just me. Those are more about pulling a team together. So I didn't formally have OKRs, but I did have objectives and key results to indicate that. So I had the general concept of it for sure.
And that's why, again, this book exists. Some things need to be scrappier and other things don't.
Yep.
To this point, it sounds like the hard part is just getting the words down, the outline falling apart, blocking time, chasing deadlines, then being told to cut pages you loved, enough to make anyone pause. But what surprised me even more is that the most important book decisions didn't happen in the writing at all. It's what you can actually see, touch, use. I think you might be surprised by that too. A lot of people think writing a book is purely creative, but it's also a real investment of your time, your energy, and resources along the way. While doing my own research, obviously people always bring up as you become a consultant, I was like, would you write a book? I thought about printing costs. I knew that would be on the table, but I had no idea what else adds up. So like talking to people, multiple rounds of editing. Was that the part that surprised you the most? Or was it something else?
I don't know if I'd say it surprised me because I didn't know what to expect. So I just researched to learn along the way. But there is a lot more that goes into it than I ever thought of. I mean, the interior layout is a good example, right? When they told me that you got to get an interior designer to do this, I was like, okay, I mean, like what, fonts and cool. But what she did was so much more than that. It blew me away because she literally made it easier to read by doing all these things. Like I had all these bullets in there, for example, and the bullets are still in there, but the way she treated them makes it easier to take it in. Or she did this little thing where around there's like, I have lots of things in there. There's stories and concepts, whatever. And then there's how-to sections. The how-to sections all have these little light gray frame around them, so you can easily identify them. Or the thing she did that really blew my mind. There's 6 parts in the book, as you know, and at the end of each part, there's a summary and a checklist. So she put these little black tabs on the edge of the pages, which I thought, okay, cool, you can sort of see that section. But she said, well, one of the benefits of when we print the book, you'll be able to see those sections on the side. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see those little lines there.
That is so cool. How did she do that? Did they gray the page a little bit more on those?
She just put these little black tabs on the edge of the page. Like, I'd have never thought of that in a million years. But it's so helpful because now you can quickly pop to that point in the book just from looking at the side of it. So like, I never thought of that. Never would have thought of that ever. And so she did, and it's made it so much better.
It feels like a bookmark in the book, which is really, really, that is so fun. That is so fun. I would have never thought of an interior designer, by the way, for a book. What? Was it a woman or? Yeah.
Woman, yeah. Jessica, she's amazing. Awesome.
Jessica, I'm giving you major props here. Yes, the strategy trap. I love it. Talk to me about the visual. You told me an interesting story about that little box that people will see.
Well, yeah, I mean, we went through a lot of iterations trying to get to this idea because I wanted to sort of capture the scariness of the trap, but find a way around it, Right. And so that's ultimately we got to a this hole in the ground, like sort of a stage door, trap door or something that you might fall into. And
there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't even thought of that one. Good one. Yeah. Then the other fun thing is we went to a lot of different colors too. And we settled on this yellow and red idea. It really popped. It felt good. But when I mentioned it to the head of the publishing company, I said, hey, what's kind of cool too is that my foundational formative years of my career were at Tower Records. And that was yellow and red. And I thought that was cool. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. Why don't we make it the exact same colors? And I was like, oh yeah. So those colors are exactly Tower's colors. It's kind of fun.
At any point did you have to trade off or deprioritize anything? Think about like you're writing a book, maybe you couldn't take on a project or you couldn't go to a conference. What was like involved like as you try to make this book real?
Yeah, that for sure happened. I mean, I took those 2 months and didn't do anything but write the book. What I learned is that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. I finished those 2 months and then it still had no work because I hadn't prepared.
Yeah, because you had to lead gen.
I had to start all over again. So in retrospect, I probably would have done that a little differently.
That is crazy. I mean, disclosure to everyone, that is just a part of the process. Like you have to be doing everything all at once. I bet you also probably appreciated that 2 months of doubling down and completely black out offline. Anytime you're out of pocket, it's hard. I'm sure like now you're kind of seeing the fruits of your labor. So excited for you. As we wrap, you lay the problem of 90% of strategies fail. What matters more and why?
Between strategy and execution? Yeah, execution by a
Mm-hmm.
mile. Not surprising,
Yeah.
I would say that. I
Yeah.
actually think, though, that writing the strategy should be the first step of execution, not the thing that happens before execution. Great ideas are a dime a dozen, honestly. I tell a story in the book about Derek Sivers, who told me this story about someone who came to him with an idea, and said, here's the idea, $1 billion idea, figure out how to execute it. You're the tech guy, kind of thing. And Derek kind of explained to him that ideas are a multiplier. But if you have a great idea and crappy execution, you're multiplying your idea by 0. You're going to get nothing. You have to have great execution, and a so-so idea, excellently executed, is going to get you a lot more than a great idea poorly executed. That's just kind of the math of the way Derek laid it out. But I think that's the reality. Strategies fail because they never actually come to fruition. So that's the problem.
Yes, I 100% agree. As a counterpoint, what's the multiplication of having great execution but not a great idea?
I'm not saying that great execution will help a crappy idea. But a so-so idea will do a lot better than a great idea if it's executed really well. I think that's really what it comes down to. But I do think the whole book, the main point of the whole book is that the strategy should be part of the execution, not the other way around. The first thing we talk about in the book is co-creation and bringing people in to create that strategy, right? But when you co-create it, then you're getting some really important moments. You're getting alignment and buy-in. You're getting validation. And you're getting commitment. Your great idea goes nowhere if it doesn't have those 3 things, in my experience. And so that's
100%.
why I sort of start with that.
When I came away from the book, there's not only a strategy before step 1 of execution, but there's strategy within execution. And that's the really important piece, right? That is what makes or break. I wanted to play this or that between 2 concepts that you created yourself. There's a lot. What I love about this book is that you give credit where it's due. You present concepts that others in the industry love and say, I love this one. This should be part of my process. You also introduce ones you yourself created. And there's 2 that I'd love for you to, 1, tell us what problems they solve. If you had to choose one that has been the most helpful in this or that, the bucket method, the hook, scare, comfort, inspire, which one would it be? Could you walk us through the problem that each solves and then afterwards choose which one?
The bucket method is around prioritization. What I think happens a lot of times is, well, first of all, let me say that I think it's critical in prioritization that you stack rank things. So you don't have high, medium, low. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very clear order of priority. But that's hard for people. I came up with a bucket method at its point at Nike. We had like 60 things on the list, and for someone to go and go in a room and argue and say, what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of that big of a list, it's just a cognitive overload. So we went through lots of methods trying to get there. And I finally realized, okay, let's just look at these things in buckets. Let's look at top 20, second 20, third 20. That we could get everybody to do, okay, what's in the top 20? Well, once we got to 21 items, something had to come out, and so we said, okay, now let's have 2 buckets of 10. What's the top 10? What comes out? So we narrowed it down a little bit that way by having that clarity of trade-off and using big buckets initially to help get people's heads around it. It allowed us to get to the stack rank. It just kind of helped us overcome some of those cognitive problems. So that's one. Hook, scare, comfort, inspire is a way of conveying a presentation, a persuasive message. The reason I came up with that is it's kind of emotional. It's really like hook them, scare them, comfort them, inspire them. Think about your audience, right? Yeah. And what's the emotional state that you want to run people through? First, you have to hook them. You got to get their attention, right? Yeah. And then the next thing to do is scare them, like present the problem in a way that is going to hit emotionally. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Then you comfort them. Okay, emotionally, make them feel a little bit better about it. But then inspire, because you want to like lead on to like, hey, this is going to take us to great things. So those are the 2 different things. Now you're going to make me choose.
I'm going to make you choose.
I will choose the bucket method just because I think that getting to stack rank priority makes a massive difference, and how you talk about it is worthless if you can't get to the priorities first.
I love it. Prioritization is key, especially for execution, which is there's a bias for action, and how are we moving and how are we getting results. I love that choice. One question I had is, when do you choose that you're just going to take a framework as is, it's useful, and when is it that you create your own, as others that might be inspired to create their frameworks out there?
I think based on effectiveness, those two existing prioritization methods were wrapping people up in axles. We weren't getting anywhere with the kind of more common ones, so need to find one that was going to work with the group. And then I found that it works with lots of groups. The hook, scare, comfort, inspire model is not that different from other ones that are out there, but it was what helped on that one land with people I was working with was just that it felt simpler to them, and it felt, they got the emotional idea of it. It didn't feel like some frameworks feel so academic that it's just hard to relate to them. And that one people can relate to better. That's how I got to it.
Yeah, it's a fun question for you. What strategy book would you pair with it? If you were a tandem, if strategy is step one of execution, what should I be reading and then pairing with yours?
Yeah, I think Play to Win, Roger Martin, because that one is the most simple to understand and to convey to people. It's just, he's got simple stuff in there. How are we going to win? Where are we going to play? Where are we not going to play? It's just clear, super clear. I like that one.
I haven't read that one. So now I have to go read that, and it will be so fun to have this 1-2 punch to work through. I'm so excited for others to read it. I think this will be so helpful for operators, but also for people who want to write a book and understand what it takes and what inspires it. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being on here.
Thank you for having me. You're the best, Edilsa.
It's kind of perfect about this conversation is that the way that Kevin made this book shows you everything you actually need to know to get it done. All the trade-offs, the little choices, the things that really make it work instead of just looking good. That's the story. Rolling up your sleeves, actually making it happen. And I can't wait to hear what you think about it.
Great. So this was another great episode. Evolve Voices is a podcast from Evolve Commerce Club, the #1 private community, where we connect senior commerce professionals in more than 40 markets. Every week, we invite one expert to share their perspective and their knowledge. If you want to know more about Evolve, look at the link in this episode description to request your invitation. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!